Cold is a thing. It is a thing to go outside in Finland in winter. You wear multiple layers, starting with a wool layer and ending with an outside waterproof layer, both on your legs and on your body. You wear mittens rather than gloves because mittens are warmer than gloves. You make sure your shoes are big enough to allow for an air pocket around your feet. I recently read a story where the character went out in extreme weather, in what was described as Arctic weather. This character has no magic, they have no magical abilities. And yet, the only clothing that they put on to go into this Arctic weather was a coat. They put on a coat and walked out into the 2-meter snow. That's a dead character. Today, I want to talk about extreme elemental conditions, specifically extreme cold conditions. When I say extreme cold conditions, I mean anything from -40 to -10 Celsius. That's -40 to +50 Fahrenheit, if my calculations are correct. Now, I'm going to focus on Arctic conditions rather than Antarctic conditions because I am actually more familiar with Arctic conditions living as I do in Finland. When you are in a situation like this, where you are in this extreme cold conditions, it becomes a struggle against the elements for every step of the way. And that changes a lot about your culture. So today, let's take a look at how your physical world is affected by such extreme weather conditions and how your culture and people are affected, and finally, how your magic and fantastical creatures are affected. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. First, let's talk about some purely physical things. In extreme cold conditions, there are a couple of things that happen with your fauna and flora. Looking first towards your fauna, your animals. Animals will mostly be endothermic. Endothermic means they generate their own heat. They're like us, mammalian animals. If you have some kind of summer, you're likely to have some ectothermic animals, animals that require the sun to heat them up. So we do in Finland have snakes, but they obviously are dormant during the winter, or they migrate during the winter. The Arctic has a lot of migratory animals. You can see geese migrating quite often here in Finland and so on. Generating heat is not enough. You also have to prevent the heat escaping. Animals do this in a couple of means. Firstly, in cold climates, animals tend to be larger. That's why you had megafauna during the Ice Age period. Extreme colds make animals bigger. They make them physically bigger. There are also a couple of techniques that animals evolve in order to keep the heat inside them. They develop blubber, which is a thick layer of fat that prevents the heat from escaping from the organs. They develop fur. Reindeer fur, as an example, is so good at insulating the reindeer that snow that falls on top of a reindeer, it doesn't melt. You actually can see a reindeer walking along with a pile of snow on its rump because the snow doesn't melt even though it's landed on the reindeer. And of course, feathers is a great insulating mechanic. All animals in the Arctic will be well insulated using one or multiple of these techniques. All animals eat a high energy diet. Mostly they are carnivorous animals because meat delivers a higher content of energy. The food that the animals eat needs to be easy to digest. You cannot spend most of your energy digesting food. You need that energy to hit your bloodstream and generate heat as fast as possible. Some animals do huddle together for warmth, and some, of course, migrate. Plants go the opposite direction from animals. They become more stunted. So trees in the Arctic don't grow as tall as they do in the south, and their leaves won't be these broad leaves. Broad leaves lose heat. Trees in the Arctic have these needles. Those needles, by the way, make for good eating generally, or at least good drinking in a tea. Very flavoursome, and it makes you warm. If you have any kind of fruit In these conditions, they will mostly be berries, mostly smaller fruits. You're not going to see things like bananas, which have got big fruit. It's going to be small, compact fruits. In fact, if you take a banana into the winter conditions, it'll freeze solid because of the amount of water in it. Moss and lichen are our grass equivalent up here. You are unlikely to see proper grass. And lichen is one of the primary energy sources for the carnivorous animals, especially in winter, because they can push the snow aside to get to the lichen. Okay, so much for the fauna and flora. What about human survival? As I said in the opening sequence, you wear mittens rather than gloves. You make sure that there is an air gap between your boot and your foot. The reason why you do all of this is because you need the air that is trapped in your clothes to warm up from your body heat and provide an insulating layer between yourself and the outside. If you are outside in the snow, an axe is the difference between being alive and being dead. You needed to cut down spruce branches to build a shelter, to build a bed, to lift you up off the snow. You need an axe for firewood, and you are going to need a fire. You can only build an igloo if you have mushy snow, but you can build a shelter called a quincy out of powder snow. Don't touch metal. Don't cover your face. Your breath will condensate. That condensate can turn into ice on your skin. If you are doing work like setting up your camp, be aware that you can sweat. That sweat can turn into ice. That can be deadly. Melt snow, you are going to need a lot of drinking water. You can die from dehydration in the winter. You lose water to the cold. Don't sleep on snow. Make sure you build yourself a bed to sleep on. If you are moving through thick snows, you are going to need either snows or skis. And I'm not talking about downhill skis, I'm talking about cross-country skis. Preferably the wide cross-country skis, not, the little narrow ones. In my opinion, the wide cross-country skis are superior to snowshoes, and you can fight me in the comments if you differ from that opinion. Okay, so that's your basic human survival. If you want to know more about human survival, there's plenty of videos on YouTube about it. What impact does this kind of survival-orientated lifestyle have on your culture? Firstly, your culture is unlikely to be an economically focused culture. They're not going to be an exporting culture. They're going to be a culture that is mostly self-sufficient. They're probably a hunting culture of some sort, either hunting out of the sea or hunting across the tundra plains. The Sami, for example, have been reindeer herders for centuries. And they moved with the reindeer herds. Many of them, they were semi-nomadic, migrating with the reindeer around the Arctic Circle. Your festivals are likely to focus heavily on the middle of summer and the middle of winter. The reason for that is your light. Summer in Finland is amazing. There comes a period where the sun is up at 4 in the morning and it does not set until well past midnight. It is amazing. The converse is also true. There comes a period in the winter where it is dark. And if you go up beyond the Arctic Circle, there is a point where it is dark for longer than 24 hours. The sun literally does not rise. You celebrate midsummer because this is the highest point of life. This is the most glorious time. This is the time when you need to remember all of this because the dark is coming. And then you celebrate midwinter because this is the end of the dark. From here on out, it starts to get a little lighter every day until we reach that glorious high point of the 24-hour day. So your culture is likely to have celebrations, especially for those 2 days. Your religion is likely to be animistic focused. The reason for that is because the environment is so harsh, people naturally ascribe personality to it. They turn rocks and animals and trees into spirits that they worship as a coping mechanism because of the extreme conditions. You're also probably going to see a lot of shamanistic magic for the same reason. And politically, your primary political organization is probably going to be focused around the family and the extended family. In such a harsh environment, you don't gather together in large cities, and it's just not viable. And so, especially if you have a semi-nomadic culture, your whole organizational structure is built around the clan or the family and its extended units. You cannot overburden any specific area by overhunting or overfishing. You will literally kill yourself. And because of that, you need to spread out. And a spread out distributed government means that you have a spread out distributed political organization. Okay, so much for all the physical aspects. Let's talk a little bit of magic. Traditionally, drums, animism, shamanistic magic is typically associated with the Arctic Circle. The Disney movie Elsa brought the elements that Hans Christensen introduced, which is that of the Ice Queen, the elemental magic. Avatar: The Last Airbender also had the water magic guys, the water magic tribe, live at the two poles. Your elemental magic for water is often based around the ability to turn things to ice. Iceman from X-Men does the same kind of thing. Harry Dresden in the Dresden Files, in the later books, spoiler warning for Harry Dresden, skip on if you haven't gotten there yet. In the later books, Harry Dresden takes on the mantle of the Winter Knight. And there is this one amazing scene where he freezes his enemy, and he then uses force to break them apart into different separate ice blocks. So you can use that kind of elemental freezing magic to literally freeze somebody and then shatter them apart in a really spectacular, grim death scene. So elemental magic clearly lends itself very nicely to your Arctic conditions, especially the element of water and, of course, ice. Let's talk about some magical animals. D&D has the frost dragon, which lol, because dragons should be cold-blooded creatures, so you have to jump through a lot of magical hoops to make that frost dragon work. But okay, it's got ice as its breath weapon, it's white, and it is fine with being in the cold. There are, of course, the frost giants from Norse mythology, also used in the Marvel universe. I don't know why so many of the ice creatures are evil. The others from Game of Thrones, which are, again, evil monsters. And, of course, the Ice Queen from Hans Christian Andersen, the White Witch from Narnia. So many evil creatures from the north. I wonder if they're trying to tell us something. Anyway, here's a couple of mythological creatures from the north that you might not know about. The Yeti, of course, the abominable snowman that everybody thought was real, is probably some variation of a polar bear that somebody saw. The Yuki Oni, which is from the Far East, that calls blizzards down on people. The Mahaha, that tickles people to death. And this one is quite a stupid creature, so you can fool it quite easily by pushing it into running water, and it comes from the Inuit of North America. And then, of course, there are various winter fairies and winter trolls, and all of the Norse mythology that you can lay your hands on. So next time that you have characters in the Arctic cold in your campaign, or if you're looking to write about the Arctic cold in your campaign, bear in mind that cold means cold. The environment is trying to kill you. And factor that in to the culture that you create, to the world that you build, and how your characters react to that environment trying to kill them. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please do hit the like button if you did. It does help with the algorithm. Also, let me know if you want me to cover any other extreme elemental conditions in the comments down below. Thank you very much, and see you soon for another episode of Just in Time Worlds.